In this video, I am going to be ranking all of Niantic's apps that they've ever developed, including ones that were cancelled and ones that are upcoming. I really think this is going to be interesting because Niantic actually has a really long history of game development, and I do think there's a couple of games that deserve a lot more attention than they currently are getting, and I also think there's a lot of cancelled games that had a lot of potential, and it's a real shame that they got cancelled. I'm going to be talking about all of this in this video, so let's jump right into it. Alright, let's jump right into it. I am Count Jinsula. This video is going to be a tier list for every single app that Niantic ever developed. I actually think that when it comes to a lot of these apps, there's a couple of them that I still use to this day, and there's a couple of apps that I actually think Niantic wasted their time and resources on. And yeah, I really think it's very interesting because there's quite a lot of things that people are very surprised Niantic was developing. And, you know, I really feel like there's a lot of things that could be learned by looking at this tier list. So yeah, with that said, let's jump right into it. So every single one of these apps were developed by Niantic at some point. And of course, you might see some apps that are very familiar, like Peridot and Pokémon Go, but there's also a couple of apps that you probably did not ever know existed. And I really do think that these apps had a lot of potential. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is, of course, Niantic Campfire. This is kind of like one of their non-gaming apps. It's basically a social platform app that's connected directly to all of their games. And I actually think this is one of the most important apps for you to have if you're playing any of these games. So therefore, I'm actually going to put it in a B tier, mainly because this app is pretty good. Like, there's still a lot of good things that you could do through Niantic Campfire, especially if you are a Pokémon Go player. The only thing is, I feel like Campfire is currently in a more of a beta state, or more of a kind of a lower tier state. Like, there's a lot of potential that this app has to be extremely useful, but it's not living up to that potential right now. So eventually, I would like to think of this app as an A tier app, but as of right now, it is currently a B tier. Now, I'm not going to be going in this order, but I'm kind of going to gauge like what app is probably the most interesting, and I'm going to start with those. So let's talk about some of the canceled games that Niantic developed. First and foremost, there was a Marvel AR game. I think it was called Marvel World of Heroes. This one, by concept, is going to be a C tier. I really liked the idea of this game. Like, it's basically an AR game set in the Marvel universe. And I thought there was a lot of potential with that because when it comes to Pokemon Go, which is kind of like a collection-based game, I thought the idea of collecting Marvel heroes in a similar fashion would have been really interesting. And you could develop a team to kind of fight against other players or, you know, NPCs. I thought that was a cool idea. Unfortunately, it is a canceled game, and because of that, you really won't ever be able to try out this game, unfortunately. I really feel like AR gameplay only really works for, like, monster collecting. Like, after you collect heroes, like, what would you do with them? Like, you can't collect duplicates of that hero. I don't know how that would make it work, but I really feel like with the Marvel franchise, it would have worked better as a non-AR game, so yeah, but we'll never know because it was a canceled product. Next up, let's talk about the Transformers game. This is kind of in the same boat. It is another canceled project, and it was basically the same thing with the Marvel World of Heroes game. It's an AR game with the world of Transformers, and I thought that was kind of interesting, but again, we will never know. The concept is cool, like having a Pokemon Go style game, but with the world of Transformers, but I really do not know how that would have worked. So yeah, unfortunately, another C tier game. And then here's another canceled project. It is Catan World Explorers. Now, instead of putting this in a C tier, I'm actually going to put this in the B tier. And the reason why I do that is because from everything that we saw, this was actually going to be a very interesting game. It's something that I feel like would have been really successful if Niantic actually pulled the trigger. I really do not know why they canceled this project. It was one of my most anticipated games, and just based on everything that I heard from all the beta testers, this was actually a fun game. Like, it was basically Catan mixed with Pokemon Go, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, unfortunately, it is another canceled project. I really do not know why it was canceled. Maybe it was just something that they just felt like wouldn't be successful, or maybe it's because of Catan itself. Like, I really do not know. But yeah, this is unfortunately a canceled game, but I felt like the concept was actually a lot more interesting than what we find in the C tier. So yeah, it is a B tier for me, and I'm really bummed that it never got to see the light of day. Now, let's move on to another canceled project, and this was actually a game that was released for a little bit of time, and that is NBA All World. Now, I actually played this game for a little bit, and I have to tell you, it just did not hit the mark at all. Like, I really was confused with how you play. Like, you collect NBA players, and then you power them up by dueling with other people. The big problem with this game was that there was an insane amount of time-gated mechanics. Like, you really could not do anything in this game. You basically had to wait for your energy to recharge in order to do anything substantial. And I really felt like this did not work with AR-style gameplay. Like, imagine Pokemon Go, but you had to wait a certain number of hours before you could catch another Pokemon. Like, it just sounds bad, right? And that kind of felt like what NBA All World was. Like, in order to get past a lot of the time-gated mechanics, you had to pay premium currency. And I just felt like, just in general, it was just not a well-structured game. And yeah, it failing and crashing and burning, it just totally made sense. So unfortunately, I'm going to put this in the trash tier. And it probably is going to be the only trash tier game or app on this list. But yeah, I really cannot justify it being anything more than a trash game. And I'm really glad that it is canceled. Now let's move on to probably the coolest and most actually successful out of all the canceled products. It is going to be Harry Potter Wizards Unite. Now, I'm really sad that the server shut down for this game because I actually had a lot of fun playing this game. I'm going to actually put this in the B tier because, of course, it is a canceled product. It is not something you could play anymore, and I really felt like they kind of neglected this game. I really thought it had a lot of potential. It was a lot of fun when it first came out, and there was definitely a buzz around it, but unfortunately, it just did not live up to that hype because Niantic kind of put it in the back burner in favor of other games like Pokemon Go, and yeah, I really felt like that was a bad move because this game, if they actually fostered it, they could have been really successful with it. But unfortunately, it just did not really live up to that, and it's just quite a shame. So yeah, next let's move on to the Ingress titles. First and foremost, there is the regular Ingress. I'm actually going to put this in the A tier because I actually had a lot of fun playing the original Ingress. Now, I actually started Ingress back when Pokemon Go first came out because in order to create Pokestops and gyms, you needed to have a certain level in Ingress because back then we did not have Niantic Wayfarers. So, you know, in order to be able to create points of interest, like you had to be an active player in Ingress. So because of that, I actually really grinded out this one particular game outside of Pokemon Go. And I have to tell you, the concept of it was really good. Like, it's a very simple game. The minimalism of that game was actually really good and it served it well. And I really feel like it is something that is going to be missed because, of course, Ingress was discontinued in favor of Ingress Prime. And this is the updated version of Ingress. And I'm going to put it in the same tier. Actually, I'm going to put it in the S tier. If you are not an Ingress player, you do not know what you're missing out on. Like, this is actually a really fun game, and there's just a lot of good things with it. It is basically Niantic's bread and butter. Like, it is the game that spawned Pokemon Go. Like, Ingress is the reason why we have Pokemon Go. And Ingress Prime is the upgraded version of it. There's a lot of really cool things with Ingress Prime, and I do find myself opening it up every now and then, and I really do think it is a game that is very underrated, and it's just done really well. Like, if you have a lot of complaints with Pokemon Go, you need to try out Ingress Prime to see what Pokemon Go could become. And yeah, it's definitely going to be the S tier game out of all of the games on this list. Now, let's move on to Niantic's very first title. And I actually think this is something that I don't think a lot of players are aware of. It is actually Niantic Field Trip. It's not even really a game. It's kind of like a travel companion kind of app. It is going to be a C tier app for me. So I really do like the idea of Field Trip, but it's basically kind of like the bare bones skeleton for all of the other titles that you see on this list, except for Niantic Campfire. And I really feel like Niantic Field Trip was somewhat of an interesting concept. It was basically kind of like an app that would allow you to understand points of interests around you, and you could collect these cards. It was actually really interesting, and I can see how it was the foundation for pretty much everything else that Niantic developed. It's a really cool thing. It is unfortunately something you can't try out anymore, but yeah, when it was around, it was definitely interesting, and you know, I'm really excited to see what Niantic could develop if they want to go with something that's not an established IP. I think Field Trip was a good example of the things that Niantic was capable of back in the day. Now, let's move on to an upcoming game, and that is Monster Hunter World. Now, of course, we do not know anything about this game. All we know is that it's going to be an AR-based game like Pokemon Go and Ingress, and we do not know like how the gameplay is going to shape out. I'm going to go on a wild guess and say that it is going to be very similar to Pokemon Go. But I really do not know. It's definitely like something that's a bit of a question mark, but I'm really excited about it. I think the Monster Hunter IP is actually really cool, and I do think that there's a lot of things that Niantic is trying to do with this game to kind of make it the competitor to its own other game that is extremely successful. Of course, I'm talking about Pokemon Go. So I'm going to put this in the B tier because, of course, we do not have any kind of gameplay for it, so I can't really put it any higher, but there is definitely hype around this game, and I'm really looking forward to it. Next up, let's go over Peridot, and yeah, a lot of you who have been watching my channel for a while probably already know what I think about this game. It's just not a game that's meant for me. Like, it is definitely a fun concept, and it's definitely a game that I think a lot of people out there will actually enjoy, but the way that it is set up is very confusing, and there's a lot of mechanics that are paywalled and time-gated, and I just feel like this game is just something that just, I don't know, it's just not for me. So I'm unfortunately going to put this in the D tier. Like, I really do not know what it is about Peridot. I just do not like it. I just feel like this game is meant for very casual people who are not interested in any kind of competitive game mechanics. They're not interested in any kind of, I don't know, like exploration-based gameplay. Peridot is basically kind of like a Tamagotchi style game. And yeah, that's definitely going to appeal to a certain audience. But unfortunately, it is not something that will appeal to me. Finally, or I should say second to last, let's talk about Pikmin Bloom. This is probably their second most successful game, and it's for good reason. It is actually pretty fun. It kind of follows a lot of the same DNA as Pokemon Go, but there's a lot of interesting mechanics that are very exclusive to Pikmin Bloom. And I really feel like this game, if they develop it even further, could be the true competitor to Pokemon Go. But yeah, I really feel like there's a lot of things with it that are just kind of empty right now, and I really hope they continue to develop it because I do think this game is pretty good, and there is definitely a lot of polish with it. So I'm going to put this in the B tier. I really feel like when it comes to all of these games, it is pretty good, but it's kind of bare bones at the moment. Like, I feel like they could do more with Pikmin Bloom because I find myself opening it up every now and then and actually enjoying my experiences, but it's not something that will stick. It's not something that will get me playing every day like Pokemon Go. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there. I really hope they eventually meet that potential, but Pikmin Bloom is still fun, and I think it's deserving to be a little bit higher on this list compared to some of the other trash games, and yeah. Finally, let's move on to Pokemon Go. I think this placement is going to surprise a lot of you considering the nature of my channel, but we have to give credit where credit is due. Niantic had a really hot streak with this game, and it's deserving to be in the S tier. I mean, a lot of people will say that Niantic is pretty much riding on the coattails of the Pokemon IP, and yes, that is pretty much true, but in terms of Pokemon Go, I think this game is phenomenal. Like, at the end of the day, it is really good. Like, Niantic took the IP of Pokemon and they actually ran with it and created a very interesting game. It was a revolutionary game. Like, a lot of people were introduced to AR-based gameplay through Pokemon Go. So you have to give credit where credit is due. There are a lot of problems with Pokemon Go, don't get me wrong. I do think there's a lot of things that could improve with Pokemon Go, but when it comes to everything that Niantic has ever touched, it is definitely by far one of their best products. When it comes to Niantic, they owe everything to this one game. So yeah. There you have it. This is my tier list for everything Niantic. I really feel like when it comes to some of the games that are on here, I really wish they could have been released because I would have loved to have tried them out. I really thought the idea of a Marvel-based Pokemon Go style game would have been really interesting, but unfortunately, we'll just never know. It could have ran the potential of being just another NBA All-World. That's definitely a possibility, but in general, I just felt like the IP was strong enough, or it could have been a very interesting game, and yeah, it's unfortunate. And of course, there is Catan World Explorers. I'm super bummed out that that game never got released because, of course, outside of Pokemon, I really enjoy Catan. Like, that's probably my most favorite party game. And yeah, the idea of an AR-based game with Catan assets and like the Catan gameplay, like that would have been really cool. And of course, we gotta pour one out for Harry Potter Wizards Unite. That was a game that gave a lot of players fond memories. It was definitely the best alternative to Pokemon Go at the time. And I really feel like with it, it is a hard lesson that Niantic had to learn. Like, they need to foster each game. Of course, Pokemon Go is the main game that I play out of all of Niantic's games, and I really do think that it would be beneficial for Pokemon Go if they were to implement a lot of things from their other games that were really successful into that game. It is their primary cash cow, after all, so I really do think they need to pull all the stops when it comes to this one game. And I really hope they end up doing that for the next couple of years, because yeah, I really do not know if any of these games, whether they were going to be released or not, like, I do not think any of them have the potential to ever surpass Pokemon Go. That's just the reality of it. I still think Niantic have the potential to crank out some good products. They just need to make sure they're developing each of their products in a way that's going to be sustainable, and then at the same time, they need to give a lot of their products a good amount of attention, especially their communities, because community feedback is going to make or break each of these games. So yeah, that's a hard lesson that they're currently learning with Pokemon Go, and I really hope they, you know, eventually foster a good relationship with their Pokemon Go community, because there really isn't that many options for the Pokemon Go community to go to. Like, Monster Hunter World, maybe, but I just don't know. Yeah, it's kind of a shame that we really do not have that many options when it comes to AR-based gameplay. But in any case, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Let me know your thoughts regarding all of Niantic's products down below. Do you disagree with this tier list? I would love to know why. Like, is there a game that you feel deserves to be higher, or is there a game or an app that you feel deserves to be lower? Definitely share that in the comments below, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you for making it all the way to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I make videos just like this one. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon, because all of you make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then do consider checking out the links in the description below. And as always, if you want to support my channel non-monetarily, then you could do so by following me on social media. I'm over on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is @CountJinsula, so definitely go and check me out there. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.